What then are those sayings, the obedience to which is so absolutely commanded as indispensable and all-sufficient to those who desire to inherit eternal life? They are no other than the blessed and benign moral doctrines taught in the Sermon on the Mount, contained in the 5th, 6th, and 7th chapters of Matthew, which include therefore every duty of man and all that is necessary to salvation, and they expressly exclude mere profession or belief from those circumstances which God graciously admits as giving a title to eternal happiness. Neither in this nor in any other part of the New Testament can we find a commandment similarly enjoining a knowledge of any of the mysteries or historical relations contained in those books. It is besides plainly stated that but a very small portion of the works of Jesus have been handed down to us by the evangelists. John says at the conclusion of his gospel, "There are also many other things which Jesus did, the which, if they should be written every one, I suppose the world itself could not contain the books that should be written." On the other hand, we cannot doubt that the whole spirit of his doctrines has been faithfully and fully recorded. The reason of this appears obvious. Miracles must have had a powerful effect on the minds of those who witnessed them, and who without some such evidence were disposed to question the authority of the teacher of those doctrines. "The works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness of me. If I do not the works of my Father, believe me not. But if I do, though ye believe not me, believe the works." Had his doctrines of themselves made their due impression, the aid of miracles would not have been requisite, nor had recourse to. In this country, the bare report of such miracles could have given no support to the weight of the doctrines, for as the compiler has stated in his introduction, miracles indefinitely more wonderful are related of their gods and saints on authorities that the Hindus must deem superior to those of the apostles. We are taught by revelation as well as education to ascribe to the deity the perfection of those attributes which are esteemed excellent amongst mankind. And according to those ideas, it must surely appear more consistent with the justice of the sovereign ruler that he should admit to mercy those of his subjects who, acknowledging his authority, have endeavored to obey his laws, or shown contrition when they have fallen short of their duty and love, than that he should select for favor those whose claims rest on having acquired particular ideas of his nature, and of the origin of his Son, and of what afflictions that Son may have suffered in behalf of his people. If the reviewer and editor will continue to resist both authority and common sense, I must be content to take leave of them with the following words. "And he said unto him, If they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead." The reviewer observes, in page 24, with every mark of disapprobation, that the compiler has intimated in the introduction that the dogmatical and historical matters are rather calculated to do injury. The compiler could not certainly overlook the daily occurrences and obvious facts which led him to remark, in the introduction, that historical and some other passages are liable to the doubts and disputes of freethinkers and anti-Christians, especially miraculous relations, which are much less wonderful than the fabricated tales handed down to the natives of Asia. And to prove what the compiler stated, I humbly entreat any one to refer to the numerous volumes written by persons unattached to any of the established churches against the miracles, the history, and some of the dogmas of Christianity. It has been the different interpretations of the dogmas that have given rise to such keen disputes among followers of Jesus. They have not only destroyed harmony and union between one sect of Christians and another, and continue to do so, but in past times have even caused continual wars and frequent bloodshed to rage amongst them, more dreadfully than between Christians and infidels. A slight reference to the histories of Christian countries will, I trust, afford to my readers entire conviction upon this head. Besides, the compiler, residing in the same spot where European missionary gentlemen and others for a period of upwards of 20 years have been, with a view to promote Christianity, distributing in vain amongst the natives numberless copies of the complete Bible, written in different languages, could not be altogether ignorant of the causes of their disappointment. He, however, never doubted their zeal for the promulgation of Christianity, nor the accuracy of their statement with regard to immense sums of money being annually expended in preparing vast numbers of copies of the Scriptures. But he has seen with regret that they have completely counteracted their own benevolent efforts by introducing all the dogmas and mysteries taught in Christian churches to people by no means prepared to receive them, and that they have been so incautious and inconsiderate in their attempts to enlighten the natives of India as to address their instructions to them in the same way as if they were reasoning with persons brought up in a Christian country, with those dogmatical notions imbibed from their infancy. The consequence has been that the natives in general, instead of benefiting by the perusal of the Bible, copies of which they always receive gratuitously, exchange them very often for blank paper, and generally use several of the dogmatical terms in their native language as a mark of slight in an irreverent manner, the mention of which is repugnant to my feelings. Sabat, an eminently learned but grossly unprincipled Arab, whom our divines supposed that they had converted to Christianity, and whom they of course instructed in all the dogmas and doctrines, wrote a few years ago a treatise in Arabic against those very dogmas, and printed himself and published several hundred copies of this work. And another Mussulman of the name of Enayat Ahmud, a man of respected family who is still alive, speedily returned to Mohammedanism from Christianity, pleading that he had not been able to reconcile to his understanding certain dogmas which were imparted to him. It has been owing to their beginning with the introduction of mysterious dogmas and of relations that at first sight appear incredible, that notwithstanding every exertion on the part of our divines, I am not aware that we find a single respectable Mussulman or Hindu who was not in want of the common comforts of life, once glorified with the truth of Christianity, constantly adhering to it. Of the few hundred natives who have been nominally converted to Christianity, and who have been generally of the most ignorant class, there is ground to suspect that the greater number have been allured to change their faith by other attractions than by a conviction of the truth and reasonableness of those dogmas, as we find nearly all of them are employed or fed by their spiritual teachers, and in case of neglect are apt to manifest a rebellious spirit, a circumstance which is well known to the compiler from several local facts, as well as from the following occurrence. About 3 years ago, the compiler, on his visit to an English gentleman who is still residing in the vicinity of Calcutta, saw a great number of Christian converts with a petition, which they intended to present to the highest ecclesiastical authority, stating that their teachers, through false promises of advancement, had induced them to give up their ancient religion. The compiler felt indignant at their presumption, and suggested to the gentleman, as a friend, the propriety of not countenancing a set of men who, from their own declaration, seemed so unprincipled. The missionaries themselves are as well aware as the compiler that those very dogmas are the points which the people always select as the most proper for attack, both in their oral and written controversies with Christian teachers, all of which, if required, the compiler is prepared to prove by the most unquestionable testimony. Under these circumstances, the compiler published such sayings of Christ as he thought intelligible to all, conveying conviction with them, and best calculated to lead mankind to universal love and harmony, not dwelling upon those matters and observance of which is not absolutely ordained, and the interpretations of which, instead of introducing peace and happiness, have generally given rise to disputes and controversies. The compiler has had no local influence nor power to promote anyone's interest, nor has he situations to give away, nor yet has he friends and colleagues to recommend others to their patronage. Humble as he is, he has therefore adopted those measures which he thought most judicious to spread the truth in an acceptable manner. But I am sorry to observe that he has unfortunately and unexpectedly met with opposition from those whom he considered the last persons likely to oppose him on this subject. From what has already been advanced, the reviewer may perceive the reason why the passages extracted by the compiler from the Gospel of St. John should be comparatively few. It is from this source that the most difficult to be comprehended of the dogmas of the Christian religion have been principally drawn. And on the foundation of passages of that writer, the interpretation of which is still a matter of keen discussion amongst most learned and most pious scholars in Christendom, is erected the mysterious doctrine of three gods in one Godhead, the origin of Mohammedanism, and the stumbling block to the conversion of the more enlightened among the Hindus. To impress more strongly on the minds of those whom this compilation was intended, the doctrines taught by Jesus, the compiler thought the varied repetition of them by different but concurring reporters highly advantageous, so showing clearly that those doctrines were neither misrepresented nor misconceived by any of those evangelists. Nor is the conduct of the compiler in selecting certain passages of the Scriptures for certain purposes singular, for we see very often extracts from the Bible published by the learned men of every sect of Christians, with a view to the maintenance of particular doctrines. Christian churches have selected passages from the Bible which they conceive particularly excellent and well adapted for the constant perusal and study of the people of their respective churches. And besides, it is the continual practice of every Christian teacher to choose from the whole Scriptures such texts as he deems most important for the purposes of illustrating them and impressing them on the minds of his hearers. Nor will those teachers, if questioned as to their object in such selection, hesitate to assign as their motive the very reason adopted by the compiler as his, the superior importance of the parts so selected. Whether or not he has erred in his judgment on that point must be determined by those who will candidly peruse and consider the arguments already advanced on the subject, always bearing in mind the lesson practically taught by the Savior himself, of adapting his instructions to the susceptibility and capacity of his hearers. I have yet many things to say unto you, but ye cannot bear them now. Hindustan is a country of which nearly 3/5 of the inhabitants are Hindus and 2/5 Mussulmans. Although the professors of neither of these religions are possessed of such accomplishments as are enjoyed by Europeans in general, yet the latter portion are well known to be firmly devoted to a belief in one God, which has been instilled into their minds from their infancy. The former, I mean the Hindus, are with a few exceptions immersed in gross idolatry, and in belief of the most extravagant description respecting futurity, antiquity, and the miracles of their deities and saints, as handed down to them and recorded in their ancient books. Weighing these circumstances and anxious from his long experience of religious controversy with natives to avoid further disputation with them, the compiler selected those precepts of Jesus, the obedience to which he believed most peculiarly required of a Christian, and such as could by no means tend, in doctrine, to excite the religious horror of Mohammedans or the scoffs of Hindus. What benefit or peace of mind can we bestow upon a Mussulman who is an entire stranger to the Christian world, by communicating to him without preparatory instruction all the peculiar dogmas of Christianity, such as those contained in chapter 1 of St. John? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Would they not find themselves at a loss to reconcile this dogma to their unprepared understandings? Although the interpretations given us of such texts by truly learned and candid divines be ever so satisfactory, yet to those that are strangers to these explanations they cannot be intelligible, nor can it be expected, from the order of things, that each can happily find at hand an able interpreter to whom he can have recourse for an explanation, whenever he may be involved in difficulties or doubts. But as a great number of missionary gentlemen may perhaps view the matter in a different light, and join the editor of the Friend of India in accusing the compiler as an injurer of the cause of truth, I doubt not that with a view to avoid every possibility of such imputation, and to prevent others from attributing their ill success to his interference with their duties, he would gladly abstain from publishing again on the same subject, if he could see in past experience anything to justify hopes of their success. From what I have already stated, I hope no one will infer that I feel ill-disposed towards the missionary establishments in this country. This is far from being the case. I pray for the argumentation, and that their members may remain in the happy enjoyment of life in a climate so generally inimical to European constitutions. For in proportion to the increase of their number, sobriety, moderation, temperance, and good behavior have been diffused among their neighbors as the necessary consequences of their company, conversation, and good example. The reviewer charges the compiler with inconsistency, because he has termed the precepts collected by him a code of religion and morality, while, as the reviewer supposes, they form only a code of morality and not of religion. It is already explained in paragraph 2nd that the compiler has introduced those precepts of Jesus under the denomination of the moral sayings of the New Testament, taking the word moral in its wide sense, as including our conduct to God, to each other, and to ourselves. And to avoid the least possibility of misunderstanding the term, he has carefully particularized the sense in which he accepted that word by the latter sentence. This simple code of religion and morality, meaning by the former those precepts which treat of our duty to God, and by the latter such as relate to our duties to mankind and to ourselves, is so admirably calculated to elevate men's ideas to high and liberal notions of one God, etc., and is also so well fitted to regulate the conduct of the human race in the discharge of their various duties to God, to themselves, and to society, and etc. In conformity to the design thus expressed, he has collected all the sayings that have a tendency to those ends. The compiler, however, observes with regret that neither this language nor this fact has afforded to the reviewer satisfactory evidence of his intention, nor sufficed to save him from the unexpected imputation of inconsistency.